Hi, this is Nick here from OnlyFabs, and today I have an amazing video with you because who are you, Sander?
Hi, I'm Sander Neeft. I'm an X-Wing and board game fan that switched to Flesh and Blood recently. I won the calling Utrecht, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and an interesting note is that he quit playing X-Wing because it wasn't competitive enough, and then now you're a raging Flesh and Blood fanboy because, well, this game lends itself for being competitive, right?
It really does, yeah, it really does.
So you won Calling Utrecht. Just for anybody who missed the format, it was one draft bot, so 3 rounds, then 4 classic constructed, another draft bot, 2 classic constructed due to the amount of players, and then a top 8. And I asked Sander, how big was draft versus classic constructed?
I think CC is just preparable. You can easily build your deck, test matchups. You can practice it a lot better than draft, in my opinion. Draft will always be a bit more different. You don't know what to expect. So I think that's a little bit more based on intuition. I do think draft was really big in this format because it starts with a draft.
Yeah.
If you lose 2 rounds, but especially when you lose three, then you're just instantly out. If you lose 2 rounds, it already gets like really rough if you lose the first two. So I think draft is a big part of this format. CC a bit less, therefore, even though it's more rounds of CC, or it's both six, by the way, so that doesn't
Uh,
really matter.
yeah, in this case it's 6. Well, the top 8 was so that's another 3 matches, but only if you win it.
Okay, yeah. So actually, CC is bigger if you get further into the tournament, but especially just getting to day two and making it to like further into the tournament, I think draft was really important.
Yeah, and all in all, it's easier, and we will mention it later on how you can test and prep for TNT for CC. But I think the biggest part was that what we had a back and forth with was dare to power pivot.
Yeah, I think if you're just too stuck after pick one, it can get rough. I had a lot of people talk about forcing Phi. I do think there is something correct about it, but I also do think it's really important to make sure that you are able to pivot between heroes if necessary and if the draft is suited for it.
And you need a
Yeah,
little bit of.
yeah, you do need a little bit of luck. Like without a little bit of luck, you're not winning a tournament this big.
No, somewhere along the rounds, you won the match because your opponent's keycard was on the bottom of his deck and your keycards were on top of it. But you, all in all, you need to be consistent and you need to have that one lucky turn. But with a little bit of luck, deck building doesn't. We had a better bruggetje. But building fire, and that's the reason why I wanted to invite you. And what I always try to do in these videos, if you haven't watched a video of me before, I try to be more generalistic about why something works or how you should approach something, and that's what I wanted to ask Sander about. So, building Fi in a post-stubby world, what's the strategy, what's the tactics, and what's the operations for it, just to get a grasp of where to start. Because if you want to have 80 cards and you just say, okay, let's build a deck and I need to fill in 80 cards, start with Art of War and blah blah blah, you get overwhelmed, information overload. So you need to have funnel this concept for you. So key strategy: doing more damage than the opponent has block value. That's easy. And why in the tactics is it better to run mask and be able to block? Why is that sentence in there?
Well, with stubbies, it could be easy to, with bouncing links, get to like a huge combo turn. That's not possible anymore. So I think just getting mask off consistency puts pressure on your opponent. He does need to block it, or your damage will just go through the roof. And well, as we said before, the strategy is doing more damage. So if they don't block mask, your damage get even higher, and that well.
Yeah.
So I think that's why mask is there. But I also do think that you can run into some lesser hands, and that you do need to be able to block the key attacks from your opponent, especially in aggro matchups, but also in like disruption matchups. You do need to be able to block those key breakpoints. I do think that's more necessary than what it was before.
Yeah, that's the change from pre-stubby world into a post-ban stubby world.
Yeah, I think with stubbies you could easily just not block and go for the full combo and win that way. But without stubbies, you do need a bit more, guidance with blocking and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was also, this was the case with Pussy Mask Stubby, because you had that one huge ass turn where you do 40 plus damage. Now Stubby is
Yes.
gone. Pussy Mask has less value, so the OG Mask has more value. And now,
Yes.
strategy-wise, these cards are your build around Majestics. These cards enable the fact that you can even start building this deck, right?
Yeah, I think without these cards you don't get above rate as much, and with these cards you can easily push a hand to being way above rate. And especially Art of War is a good one, but Spreading Flames also just can get insane if you build your deck correctly.
Yeah, it's so I haven't even read the card. I read it previously, but it has oh yeah, that's also a card that has an easier, higher amount of value efficiency. That was the reason why we
Yeah, it
it
easily gives bonuses just like Art of War.
yeah.
So yeah.
So flat out, it's like 3+ damage in Artivar, who has 2 additional cards that deal base 2-3 damage. So that's the reason why you can go much wider. So the strategy, the core components to have the strategy fulfilled, are present in the pool. And then the obvious picks for the tactics, Mask of Momentum was mentioned earlier, and Flame Call Awakenings. Well, it's 6 damage.
If you have above it 6 damage, without above it's even 4, so that's still kind of alright. It does help with your Moss trigger, because if you play this after you've played a red card, it's 2 chain links because of the extra Phoenix Flame that you get.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps you trigger Mask more often. You can get 2 hands where you push Mask trigger twice. Old Katsu most of the time went to 1 Mask trigger. That was pretty blockable for most decks. Going to 2 Mask triggers does make it a little bit harder.
Yeah, especially if so you have blocked the first one and then getting 3 chain attacks afterwards again. For OG Ira, that was impossible. So it's just block the second one and you're done. And here it's like, yeah, but I'm going to chain tech 7-ish. So that's the reason why these cards maybe are obvious, and then less obvious picks.
Yeah, so first we see the Flying
Flying
Kick. I
kick,
think
yeah.
Flying Kick, you don't see it often. You do see it a little bit. It's just there for the 3 block, I guess. But it can also be an above rate card if you just run into many blues. Most decks run Belittle Minnowism. You get a Minnowism, you have an extra blue. I
Mm-hmm.
think Flying Kick just really helps in those big blue hands.
Yeah.
Besides that, I've put Rising Resentment there. I think Rising Resentment yellow specifically can be really nice because it's a 2-tech card. It works with Shuko. But if you run into too many yellow cards, you can pitch it for your weapon as well. So it's multifunctional
Yeah,
for that.
and this one was specifically mentioned by Sander because he said, yeah, I can imagine a world where you see this rising resentment yellow and you're like, why is that even in there? The effect isn't that amazing. Why am I playing this card? But all in all, it's also a 2 attack that is better connected with Tiger Stripes.
Yeah, definitely. Without Tiger Stripes, that card would probably not be in there. And then we also put down Flamescale Furnace. Flamescale Furnace works a bit with the Flying Kick that we just mentioned. It does add for a bit of more block value. Of course, Shuko does that as well, but Shuko does it only once, and you remove the effect. Flamescale, you can use it twice. It just meant to block those key triggers from your opponent. Those snatches, consuming volitions, that
Yeah,
type of cards.
and the most interesting part there, well, interesting to keep in mind is that if you block with 1 card and a piece of equipment, you've stopped the 3+ attacks, so the 4-5 attack, and still have a manageable hand where you actually try and pressure back your opponent. Because I think the most matches I lose afterwards, I'm thinking like, yeah, I was just too. I just slapped down 9 cards and I think like, yeah, block 9, Arsenal pass, and then it was really difficult with a lower life total to actually get back into the game. And at some point, you have to just sit there and accept that your opponent will do 15 to 16 damage, and you take it all, and then come back with your hand.
And a
Uh,
flame scale, Shuko can help to block those.
yeah,
So
and
if someone comes in with a lot of damage and a snatch, and you can block the snatch with Furnace and Shuko, and you can then come back with the full hand with Mass triggers and everything, that's where it gets really out of hand for the opponent.
ja, dan loopt het uit de hand. Yeah, just we just did some English there, but it's important to note. I think that at one point you actually need to be able to block that stuff. So without flame skill, but would be another option? Of course, would be I guess Tunic,
Uh,
but
Tunic is good. I think Tunic is better than what it was before the stoppies ban. I think Tunic is there if the matchup gets longer. So into an Oldhim or anything, you can
Mm-hmm.
just keep getting those Tunic counters. But if you play into an aggro matchup, you're not getting to those Tunic counters maybe once.
Yeah.
Also, you don't want to block with Tunic at the start, so it's actually just a zero block for most of the game.
Yeah.
And Furnace, if he comes with an on-hit trigger on turn 2, I can just use Furnace.
Yeah. And just keep your momentum and not get totally pivoted.
Yeah, it can definitely be a momentum swing, blocking
Yeah.
with your equipment.
And then actually we will finish with the operation cards, and then these aren't the sexiest cards, but they are required. It's we wrote down easy value. Why did we wrote down easy value? Just
They're just easy to use as well. Like it's just 0 for 3, so you don't need resources. You don't need another card to make it work. It does make other cards work, so it makes your
that
weapon
was it.
functional because your weapon needs a draconic line to be before it. So these will function for that. These will work for things like Blaze Headlong, so it gets go again. It will work for Flame Call Awakening, so it can search for the Phoenix Flame. And of course, it works for the hero ability as well. So they're just easy value. You don't need anything to play them, but they do enable most of your other cards.
Yeah, and the reason why I try to keep it this generic is that at one point, if you want to build a classic constructed deck, you need to actually watch videos and get a basic grasp of it. But then you want to build your own version of the deck, and you need to have a grasp of what is this deck trying to do, why are some cards in it, why are some cards not in it. And then the basic premise for a fight deck will be the 50 core cards which you need to achieve. These are these go wide majestics, the Art of War cards. And then you need to have these chain starters, and then you have the above curve cards that you play, like the flying kick.
Flying kick, Blaze Headlong. Just cards that do more than just 3 go again, I feel like.
Yeah, and then you have these matchup dependent cards. So just scrolling back a bit. So you have the build around majestics that need to be in the deck and actually need to be in the card pool just to get started. And then you have the obvious picks that are just really solid with an Art of War and a Mask of Momentum, of course. Generate a combination of value, because now the card that you can draw, even if it's a blue 0 cost, will attack for 2. This is all a little better, and especially with then cards that are less obvious picks but gain more value just because of the strategy that you have you have started to pick. And of course cards that actually block, because there are plenty of cards that block for 2, and then having a blue card that blocks for 3 or pitches or actually does damage, so it fills in all the 3 blanks or all the 3 points is pretty solid. So for me, that was, now I have a basic grasp of how should I build fire and what cards will I pick and why would I pick them for my list. And I think that's important to have when you're trying to net deck, and we can generalize these lessons. And you said to me, I have an important lesson. So what's your take it away?
When I came into the Fab scene, a lot of people told me that net decking was not the way to go, and they told me you need to learn the deck, you need to become the hero, you need to feel like how the deck plays and everything. Everyone got like really obsessed with it a little bit. But when I came from X-Wing, it was just that net decking was actually pretty good, so I started doing that here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think you do need to do more than just net decking. If you just net deck, it's not going to be enough. But when you net deck, you have a basis from where to work from. So you can just look at the deck. You see how many blues there are probably in that deck. Of course, you can tweak that yourself when you find something else than the person that made the deck, but you at least have like a starting point. And I feel like net decking is just like really good for that. Yeah. We also came up with the last point, and that's just that you do need a little bit of an explanation of the deck before you can net deck it. If you don't know anything about it and you just pick up the 80 or 60 card decks and start playing them, you'll be in for trouble. But if you have a little bit of an explanation there, I do think net decking is really strong to get a grasp of every hero and to therefrom build your deck out.
Yeah, and actually, I agreed with him on this point, but and the basis for the percentages, for interest, he had a great example, the non-attack ratios of Viserai, which is pretty. It's you can spreadsheet that motherfucker really big. you can go all in on it, but especially with Icelander, which I've found really fascinating hero. And I've been looking at the card pool, and even though it's still a young and a pretty narrow card pool, see these a Frost Hex deck version and a tempo oriented version. That's a different deck. So actually having a basic grasp of these 80 cards and how they fill in slots for a matchup. So always try to pick a list, go to FOBDB, sort on tournament deck lists, and then just scan through the list and have a general idea, and maybe ask a couple of questions in the Discord. Is this the core of the deck, and is that what you always play, or for instance Frost Hex in Icelander? Should I play Frost Hex always, or should I focus more on a tempo oriented build? So this explanation is mandatory, and actually that ties into the tournament prep with 10,000 hours. You can't clock 10,000 hours yet. You didn't. But you can borrow 2,000 hours of desk research from someone with a deck list. So yeah, you can net deck, but you need to have an explanation. You need to think about what's the strategy of this deck, and then try and determine what the tactics and operations of this deck is, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think without those explanations, you're nowhere, and you'll just feel driving without a driving license, I guess.
That's a solid point. And of course,
Although always a little bit of luck. Like without a little bit of luck, you won't get there.
no, you won't get there. And then found the best part is that you are totally humble in victory. You said, well, I luck sacked into the top 8. And we actually didn't tell the story, but your preparation for calling Utrecht was pretty big. But you actually had a holiday trip planned with friends, and you just
Yeah,
said, I'll go
I
one
wasn't
day.
planning. I wasn't planning on coming there too. No. I wasn't. I was only there like I'll just play one international event. It was my first international Flesh and Blood event, and I just wanted to try it out. Just wanted to see how it went, how it goes, how it feels to be at an event that big. So I was just like, I'll play one day, then drive back to the holiday destination and be there with friends and just continue my holiday. And then well, I had enough reason to come back the second day.
Yeah, and this is the 10,000 hours that you clock with different matchups online. You did practice a ton with Fi, right? And you also played not only your 2 local armies a week.
Yeah, I do play around 2 local armies a week. I do practice quite a bit online and against a friend, Wouter. He plays a lot of Briar. He's a bit known in the Netherlands for his Briar, I guess.
Yeah, he's
But
a really solid player. Yeah, 100%.
I play a lot of matchups online that I can't get here. So the local armies I go to have around 8, maybe 10 players. So I don't have every matchup in there. What I do is I go to the online Discord, the international Discord one, and I just look for games, and there I see completely different decks that I haven't played against before, and I do think that's really solid
That's
and a
incredible.
really easy way to get into different matchups.
And a little bit of luck.
Always.
Yeah. And another point that we came across was don't get discouraged by your losses. Sometimes your losses are just random matchup luck, and I believe we had an example, but it's mostly like if your key cards are at the bottom of your deck and the key cards of your opponent are at the top of his deck, it's going to be a difficult matchup. Oh, was it? It was Bravo versus Briar, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
Wouter channel mount heroic, and then he played Command to Conquer and Exude. And how many defense reactions did you have on hand?
I had 4.
Yeah, so
So yeah.
yeah, you pretty much lost that turn and game.
The force of nature as well. So all the attacks that hit also drew cards. So yeah, that was not great.
It was terrible. And don't get distracted by your wins. I put that one in there. Is don't get how do you say it? Complacent when you just win one match. Sometimes your key cards were on top and his key cards were on the bottom. So try at least to have 3 times or 4 times played that match. So that was
Definitely,
it.
yeah.
If you have any final words for our viewers?
Well, thanks for having me. I've had a blast.
Yeah, well, thanks for giving me proper content. See you guys next time.